Once when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowd say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and to others that one of the prophets long ago has come back to life. But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "The Christ of God." Jesus strictly warned them to not tell this to anyone. And he said, "The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life." Then he said to them all, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will save it. What good is it for a man to gain this whole world and yet lose or forfeit his very self?" This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. Have you heard of the marshmallow study? It was done in 1960s by Stanford psychologist Michael Michel. It's a longitudinal study. And he gathered a bunch of 4-year-olds and brought him into a room and offered him a single marshmallow. But then he said, "I have an errand to run about 15 to 20 minutes. If you don't eat this one marshmallow and I come back and it's still there, then you'll get 2 marshmallows." He ran out. He didn't go to an errand. He went to a viewing room. Some of the kids, as soon as Michael left, they gobbled it up. A few of the kids, they were pacing and trying to control themselves, but within minutes, they gobbled it up. But there were those pacing, sitting still, under the table, whatever it is, for an agonizing, for 15 to 20 minutes, they denied themselves that single marshmallow so they could savor the 2 marshmallows. And of course, when they came back, they were able to enjoy it. Now, the interesting thing was he followed these kids. So about 14 years later, when they were about to graduate high school, he looked at the 1 marshmallow group and the 2 marshmallow group. And the difference was drastic. The 2 marshmallows, the ones who were able to deny themselves and wait, they were more confident, they were more persistent in face of difficulties, while the 1 marshmallow kids, they had self-doubt, they were mistrustful, they had lack of self-control. In fact, the 1 marshmallow kids, they scored 210 points lesser in the SAT than the 2 marshmallow kids. And so he followed them along too when they became adults. And again, the trajectory remained similar. The ones who denied, the ones who waited, they had better joy in their work and they had a better joy in the marriage. While the single marshmallow group, they tended to move from job to job and had a higher divorce rate. Learning to say no, denying yourself, leads to life. And so Jesus says, if you want to be my apprentice, deny yourself. We all know that. You expect Jesus to say that. You expect that discipleship will be like that. And I think most of us accept that demand. And we're willing to follow it because we know it, right? I mean, much of life teaches us this, that to enjoy the yes of life, you must learn to say no to things. Isn't the whole maturity process that, learning to say no, right? And from a toddler to children to adult, it's about how we can say no, right? And that's how we train and teach our children too, right? We say to our children no. In fact, I bet most of our kids think that our parents are like the no machines. All they say is no. Right? No, you cannot eat that chocolate cake. No, you cannot go to sleep late. No, you have to do your homework now. No, you cannot just skip Sunday school because you had a little fight with your friend. No. And maybe they think we are just no machines. But it's important for the child to hear the no of the adults, internalize it, and learn to say no to oneself if he is to enjoy the yes of the fullness of life. It's a maturing process for a kid. It's a maturing process for all of us. So when Jesus says in John, he says, unless the kernel of wheat falls and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. When he said that, he was not wowing anybody with a new insight to life. I think every farmer probably saw that in that agriculture cycle, the paradox of life that when you deny, you gain more. Everyone knows that. You and I know that. We're willing to say no to the single marshmallow to get the two. And so these disciples, when they heard it, they were nodding and, yeah, we agree with you. We're willing to deny. In fact, they were in that road of discipleship, living a life of denial already. They couldn't hang out with their buddies, late night bar hangout. No, they had to follow the rabbi. The whole life of discipleship is that, right? You say no to yourself and you have to say yes to the rabbi. Whatever the rabbi asks you to do, you got to do it. Discipleship. If the rabbi says, wax my car, you got to wax his car. And so the disciples were, yeah, of course, yeah. And then Jesus says, and if you try to gain the whole world, then you lose your soul. It's better to lose the world and to gain your soul and find shalom. And he was preaching to the choir, wasn't he? And so the disciples were saying, yes. And that's what we're here for. We're letting go of the world. We're following you. But did they really get it? Did they really get what Jesus was asking of them? Because what I find strange is that Jesus say this call to discipleship to those who are already his disciples. It's as if he's saying, you think you get it, this life of denial, but you really don't. You don't know how much I'm asking of you. I'm asking you to deny yourself completely. Not deny things for yourself. Not the type of investment that you and I are familiar with. Let me let go of these things so I could gain more things later. I'm saying complete denial of yourself. Arneomai is the Greek word there. And arneomai in the common usage is this, denying. Say no to yourself so then later on you could get something better. But then there's also this very harsh meaning. Disown yourself. So in 2 Timothy, Paul used that word. And in the Bible verse, he says, even if you're faithless, God will be faithful to you because God cannot disown himself. Arneomai. And so there's this very extreme version where it's about not just denying things to get more things, but disowning yourself. Forgetting yourself. Losing yourself completely, denying yourself without ever thinking about what I deserve for denying myself. Can we do that? Now that's hard. Disown myself, forget myself. One poet wrote this very honestly. If God would come to me and say, if you're willing to forget yourself, you'll find the cure for a heart attack and compose the greatest symphonies, I would not know what I would say because there would not be enough attention to my sufferings, and that's unforgivable. Don't you resonate with that? Denying so I could get something more later, I vibe with that. But forget myself completely, disown myself, have no claim to what I deserve for what I sacrifice. I don't know about that. I don't think the disciples got it. And that's why Jesus is saying this to the disciples. This teaching about discipleship, when it comes, right? It's first Jesus gets a feel for what the disciples now think of him. So as you read, he asked, who do you think I am? And of course, Peter, representing the best of the disciples, says, you are Christ, the Son of God. And he got it. He got it. He got the answer. And they feel so proud because they really feel like this is it. Because there have been so many other pretending messiahs, so many other fanatics, so many lunatics who came, they said, I'm the Messiah. But they always led their followers and apprentices to a tragic death. But they hit the jackpot. They got the right one. They were heading for greatness. So all that life that they left behind, now they're going to get something bigger. The Galilean life, the country boy life, the smell of fish in their hair life, the boring, dreary routine of farming life. They left it all. They sacrificed. Now they're going to Jerusalem. The greatness is awaiting for them for all their denials. And Jesus says, you know what's waiting for us in Jerusalem?
death. More denial. Absolute denial of our lives where we lose it completely. And of course, Mark and Matthew recounts the story, and it tells us Peter brings Jesus, right, maybe a stone's throw away from the others, and says, Jesus, stop talking about dying. You're not going to die. And at first impression, it's like, wow, Peter really loves his rabbi. He doesn't want his rabbi to die. But you listen carefully. It's not that he cares about Jesus' fate. He cares about his fate. See, what he is saying is, look, I threw away the net for you. I left everything that I knew in my life, all the comfort of my family. I left it for you, and I'm following you. So when we get there, I expect a throne for me. All the sacrifice I made, I deserve something. They were doing the one marshmallow for two marshmallow type of denying. Peter didn't get it. Disciples didn't get it. They didn't even get it till near the end. Do you remember the story? So now Jesus has been teaching this, like, I'm going to die when I go to Jerusalem. They're like, yeah, but you're not. And there's nothing that bad's going to happen. Greatness is waiting for us. And now they're marching towards Jerusalem to impending death of Jesus. And you know what they're arguing about, right? They're arguing about who deserves more. Like one disciple said, man, I made more sacrifice. I deny myself more than you 11 combined together, so I'm going to get the throne right of his hand. No. And they're arguing about this. Their ears are plugged with their own voices that they cannot even understand what Jesus is teaching. If you want to be my disciple, I'm not talking about this deny one thing so you could gain two things. I'm talking about disowning yourself, throwing all your life away completely. The disciples didn't get it, did they? And then as I was preparing this message, this terrible question came to me. Do I get it? Do we get it? Do we know what Christ asks of us when he says, if you want to be my disciple? But Christ, we're already living a life of denial. We're making so many sacrifices. Look, we come on Sunday mornings, on Saturdays, maybe you're teaching, then you're spending time preparing the materials. We're denying ourselves those times, those hours when we could watch TV or spend time with my friends or family. We're denying ourselves. We come and we give you money, tithes. We're denying ourselves. Are we not? And then Sunday afternoons, we could be watching football. Today, watch New York Giants beat, Green Bay Packers. We're denying ourselves, are we not? Yeah, I'm from New York, so I just have to put that in there. And Jesus comes and says, no, you're not really denying yourself. You're only denying things to get things for yourselves. You see, the sad fact is most of the disciples followed Jesus, denied only to gain. See, the religiosity, the veneer of religiosity they had, it covered what they were really doing. They didn't really lose the world. They just repackaged it. So there's this one point here, again, just to save time, in Luke, where Jesus just has it enough, and he turns to the disciples and talks about these other teachers of law and says, these teachers of law, they're hypocrites. Why? Because it looks like, we're making sacrifice, we're denying ourselves, we're giving our life to God. But what they really want out of all that is to wear long robes and have the best seat in the banquet and have great invitations. In other words, get up, go up, gain in the world. And he says about the teachers of law, but he looks at disciples, and I'm sure the teachers of law, the disciples are hearing Jesus saying, is he talking about me? Because I actually want the long robe. I want to be invited and sit in the head of the table. I want that. And so as we hear this word, you wonder, is God talking to me? Most of our denials is not really denial of ourselves, are they? Right? One taekwondo student went to a great master and said, I want to learn from you. How long will it take to learn from you? He said, 10 years. He said, I will give my heart. I will do it 10 hours a day, whatever you tell me to, I will do. I want to study really hard. So I'm going to, nights and days and evenings, everything. So if I give all that, how long will it take? The master thought about it and said, 20 years. Because he wasn't really denying, really emptying himself to learn, was he? Terrible question. Are we denying ourselves the way Christ demands of us? Christ demands complete denial. Disown yourself. And then Christ makes it even more difficult. I guess he's like that, right? The impossible times, so he says, daily denial. Deny yourself completely and do it every day. Now, that's hard. Hey, denying yourself to a complete stranger, that's easy. Because you don't meet that stranger again. You do it once, and it's complete, and it's clean. And there's no questions that kind of lingers on. It's easy to give a coat to a stranger, but if that stranger comes back and says, "Can I have your shoes too?" You're like, "Wait a minute, I just gave it to you. Is he taking advantage of me? I mean, if I do this and deny myself, will this be better for them?" See, so many questions come when it becomes daily denial, right? When it becomes sacrifices for those who we meet every day. Every day. Questions. Is it good for that person? Am I getting it and taking advantage of? Am I going to get anything out of it? Should I not be returned for these type of denials? So many questions rise. But if we choose when we deny, then is that really denial? And just as discipleship must be daily, genuine denial, must it not be daily? For me, pastoral care, counseling, it's easier for me. It's not easy, but it's easier. You sit down, that one person, 1 hour session, probably will not come back again, right? And you sit there and I make eye contact, I empathize. I'm good. I'm a good listener as a pastor. But I'm a bad listener as a husband. Because it's like the same thing over and over again. So whether my eyes there's no eye contact, my eyes are rolling, right? I should be empathizing, but I'm disengaged. But if denial is to be genuine, must I not also be a good listening husband? Daily denial. And so, I try to live by what is preached here. So this week, I've really made an effort. Like, whenever my wife says, "Honey, eye contact," I feel you, sister. Right? And then my wife was surprised, and she said, "Are you dying?" Daily denial. But how do we do this then? Oh my goodness. It's like, deny yourself completely, deny yourself daily. Does that mean that we make ourselves feel worthless, that we hate ourselves? No, it's not that at all. I think there's a simple principle, hard to practice, but a simple principle that Jesus Christ himself shows. It's simply this. To deny ourselves completely and deny ourselves daily is to always make the person in front of me more important than me. Always to make the person in front of me more important than myself. You see this when Jesus is taking up the cross in Luke 22, I believe. And he's taking up the cross, and the women are weeping. And Jesus turns to the woman and says, "Don't weep for me, weep for yourselves because of all the sufferings that you will be going through." You see, even as he's taking up the cross, that if there's any place where you could say, "Look at me, look what I'm doing for you," it's the cross. But he's not saying that. He's saying, "I understand what you're going through." Wow. And Paul sings about this. Actually, Paul quotes a hymn. And remember that hymn? And he actually, before he quotes that hymn, he gives this introduction to the hymn. And he says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit," Philippians chapter 2. "But in humility," what is humility? "Consider others better than yourselves." Right? "Each one of you should look not only to your own interests, but to the interests of others." Your attitude should be the same as that of Christ. And then he starts the hymn. He says, "Who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but became nothing. Emptied himself completely, became nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in human appearance, He humbled himself. What's humility? Always considering others more important. How does he do it? You are more important. You are more important than me. Even at this moment, he humbled himself, became obedient to death, to where? To the point of the cross. And what is the cross? The cross is a way for the Roman government to say, we disown you. You don't even exist. And so crucifixion was not for Roman citizens. It was always for slaves, people with no names. The cross, if you were tied to the wood, according to the good book of Deuteronomy, you're cursed. So it was a way for the Jewish people to say, we disown you. We deny you. And you also know that at the cross, when Jesus hung there, when the Roman government disowned him and the Jewish, his people, disowned him, there was God the Father who also disowned him. And so he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Christ is able to disown everything completely. Why? Because at that moment, he thought I was more important. He thought you were more important. Daily denial, complete denial, means the other is always more important. William Autry, 2007, a few days after the New Year's, he was waiting at the 137th subway station. And then next to him, a man just fell with a seizure. He helped him right away without even consider, just went right away, put a pen between his mouth so he wouldn't bite his own tongue, helped him up. He looked like he was okay. A minute later, another seizure hits him, falls in the subway tracks. And there is the subway coming in, the lights visible. A split-second decision. He had 2 daughters. He asks a woman next to him, hold my 2 daughters, jumps in, tries to get him up, can't do it. And he sees a foot space of trench, a gutter trench, and he throws the man in there and covers him with his body. The train stops only after 2 cars. Oil is on his head. He comes to be known as a subway Superman. Everybody gathers around him, asks him, this is not your typical type of, self-enlightened denial where you give up something because you know you get something. I mean, he threw away his life. How did you do that? Why did you do that? And his answer was, it's something very typical. It's something that I thought anyone should do. Here's the thing. A few days later, when he visited that man that he saved in the hospital, after the hospital visit, he went to work. The fateful day when he threw his body over him, when the car stopped and everybody was screaming because they thought they got crushed, the first thing out of his lips was, we are okay down here. I have 2 daughters up there. Can you tell them that their father is okay? See, for him, it was always the other person. And so, my friends, we could do that too. It's hard and impossible, but Jesus did it for you and me. So let's follow that example. Let's always make the other person more important. Let us deny ourselves every day. For those who are serving, we thank you for your service. But I would like New Life servants to have this type of attitude. That when I serve, we don't think about what I deserve afterwards, but when I serve, I always serve with the person I'm serving as the most important person. Man, that would be revolutionary. That would be discipleship. Now, there are those people who are not serving. Well, I tell you right now, time to serve is now. Time to say no to yourself is now. Christ did it for us. We could do the same. Serve. Serve as Awana teachers. Serve as parking attendants, serve as a follow-up team, serve as a cleanup team after the fellowship. There's so many things to be done. You have your life to give, your gifts to share. May we always live a life of denial, because when we look at Jesus, it's what Jesus did for us. Let us rise.